Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited. And I like to mix up the episodes, the daily episodes. So sometimes we have a scientific episode about the science behind growing crops. Sometimes we have a focus on a particular crop, like we've done lamb's lettuce recently. And then on the science, we did titanium yesterday. And then sometimes I do a business one about the state of the industry. And I had two choices today, and was either the recent studies about growing edamame peas, the peas or the beans? I don't know. I've not done the research. So I could have done that one, or I could look at a state of the industry one. And there's a really interesting story. So I've decided to do that. I'm going to do edamame tomorrow. And so let's have a look at the story. The story is about Hydrofarm, which I'd never really come across, but loads of the common brands that are used in hydroponics are part of this company called Hydrofarm. And it's really interesting because it's one of the few hydroponic supply companies that is listed on the stock markets, or one of the stock markets. Now, this is different to vertical farm companies that are listed on the stock markets, because their own stupidity and their own business case and the amount of debt they take hold can be the reason that their share price goes up or down. So lots of legal cannabis growers have tried and failed and they've raised lots of money through issuing shares, publicly listed shares, but very few actually nuts and bolts companies are listed on the stock market. Even Hawthorne Horticulture, which is owned by Miracle-Gro, it's owned by Miracle-Gro. So the vast majority of Miracle-Gro and Scott's Miracle-Gro sales are actually lawn care and other things. They're not actually hydroponics. So it's very difficult to say, the industry is like this because of the sales of Miracle-Gro. But Hydrofarm is exclusively supplying hydroponic equipment, so it's a good barometer of where the industry is. And it's a shocking one, really, if you look at it. If you do like Google Trends of where hydroponics is searched for, you see it's down compared to COVID levels, but it's still not disastrous. Whereas if you look at the share price for Hydrofarm, it was listed just after the madness of COVID. So the earliest Google will tell you for its share price is December 2020. And then it reached a peak around February 2021 with a share price of $922, which is great. And then it slowly decreased over 2021 to the end of 21, 22. And then it sort of reached its nadir around mid-July 2022, and it's not really recovered. But I will give it this, it is still trading, and it's not gone bust, and it's not defaulted and things like this. So Hydrofarm, fair play to you. You're still going, you've still got strong brands, and you've still got some great products there. So yeah, I'm not gonna diss Hydrofarm like I've dissed certain other companies that have gone bust. And let me just tell you what the latest news is. So the third quarter results are in, and they're not great reading, but so let me just get these up. Net sales decreased to 30 million compared to 44 million year on year. So there's a reduction in overall sales revenue. There was a reduction in gross profit margin from 19.4 to 11.6. And this all resulted in net loss increasing from 16.4 to 13.1 million. So that's not good, is it? You're making a net loss. So that's due to operational costs and things like that. So if, like me, you've not heard of Hydrofarm before, you will have recognized many of the brands that they sell. So perhaps the most well-known is the GrowTech nutrient line, sort of like silver grey bottles, and Grow It, which do sort of plant plugs and propagators. So they are very common. They have their own set of lights, photo, bio. Let's have a look at some of the other ones. They do commercial scale benches and pots and things like that. So they've got their own Active Aqua is that brand. And they've got one called Heavy 16, which I've never heard of. It looks like another nutrient brand. Gaia Green, an organic fertilizer range. Another light called Phantom, perhaps. Growing equipment, a lot more trays, things like that. Innovative grower equipment. That's why they bought that. Growtainers, building unique custom growtainers. So that's part of their brand, the growtainers. I didn't know they own growtainers. You can buy a whole shipping container. Jumpstart, which appears to be a heating mat. So I think I've seen those in some grow shops. Sunblaster, a sort of home hydroponics setup, which we've seen a few, that sort of IKEA type. Autopilot, which is like controllers and sensors and heaters. Active Air, which is fans and filters. So I don't know if they're in the UK. I mentioned Grow It. Mad Farmer. What's Mad Farmer? Just looks like it is fertilizer, really, but with a funky, quirky label and bottle. And then and then a number of different grow media suppliers, which I don't think we get in the UK because of the cost of moving grow media around the world and the globe. So, yeah, interesting that they are hoping to stem their losses by rationalizing their portfolio and making savings. But there are strong headwinds in the hydroponic sector still. And so they might need to take a bit more pain before we start to see companies like Hydrofarm becoming profitable again in the future. So a bit of more depressing news really in hydroponics. But if the likes of Hydrofarm can survive and other companies can survive and sort of zombie companies go out of business, then there's potentially more profit amongst to share around. Big problem in the hydroponic sector and in agriculture and horticulture is in general is sort of zombie companies that stick around supplying at very, very low margin and not competing. Often they're run by people who have full-time jobs and then just supply at zero margin as sort of like a hobby. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, but there are people in the UK who live in a very small house, a bungalow, and they sell seaweed, ton bags of seaweed, and make £5 or £10 a bag on seaweed granular fertilizer and things like that. Absolutely bonkers. Don't know why they do it, but yeah, they cut the price and busy idiots, as we say. Some other interesting facts about Hydrofarm. It is a very fairly large hydroponic company, certainly larger than Nutreba. In 2022, that year where we saw the massive decline, they wrote off £190 million off their books, which is basically called a goodwill impairment. So they wrote that $189 million to zero, citing deterioration in the USA and Canada. So that is basically the premium that's paid based on the companies they've acquired for their IP and trademark and things like that. They did some restructuring and debt amendments. So they have tried to restructure in the past as they made losses and taken on credit, things like this. In 2023, net sales, $226 million, which sounds a lot, but then making a loss on that. So that's not good. And then going into 2024, last year, the net sales fell again. So year on year, they've been falling. And so they're making 11.5 million loss on asset disposition. So, and then again, they talked about in the last, as well as this year, last year they talked about a shift towards proprietary brands. So they were obviously selling other people's brands. And so overall, we can say Hydrofarm is a big player in the hydroponic sector, especially the legal cannabis sector. The majority of their sales are in the legal cannabis sector, so they are a good barometer of hydroponics and legal cannabis in general. They've tried to diversify outside, but they're still the vast majority of their sales. So we're talking sales from $226 million in 2023 down to $190 million in 2024, and then net losses $64 million in 2023 up to $66.7 million in 2024. So, and then all those issues around goodwill impairment, asset disposition, write-downs and things like this because of that will be things like LEDs becoming out of date and things like this. So one to watch in the future. Can they turn it around? Will the hydroponic sector give them a tailwind? And will they be able to service their debts, some of which are maturing in June 2026, I read. So, yeah, a really interesting one to look at, and one I will keep an eye on, because it's not like one where you just go onto what is Companies House in the UK and read a glimpse of their, part of their accounts every year. This one, because it's a publicly listed company, they have to list everything. They have to list their profit and loss, and they have to explain to shareholders what the hell's going on. So Hydrofarm is a really good one. I'm glad I found it, and I will be keeping an eye on the share tracker, see what goes on, see what the Q4 results are. If you found that interesting, then please do leave an Apple Podcast review. Not my best episode ever, I'll admit, but so maybe not a 5-star one. If you're not listening on Apple Podcast, don't bother leaving a review, because it doesn't help us share the podcast and get it to a wider audience. But if you could just follow the podcast, that would be fantastic. And just check out utrema.co.uk. If you're looking for something that is not a bog standard fertilizer or biostimulant or pesticide, we've got you covered, because we've got a whole range of unique technology in our portfolio. We only do liquid products. So if you're looking for heating mats and LED lights and tables for your hydroponics setup, you might want to go and speak to Hydrofarm. But for any liquids, come and speak to me first. And if we don't sell it, I'll always give you advice on who is the best person to get it from. So if you're looking for guano or something else, if you're an organic grower, if you're looking for, what else do I often tell people to go elsewhere for? Mycorrhiza, bacterial products, I'll tell you where to get them, because there is money in me reselling them to you, but life's too short, and I want to make sure people are profitable as possible. And I don't like just being a middleman. I like to make the products in my own company and not just resell, because that's not what we are. We're a manufacturer. Anyway, that's enough waffling and babbling. I'll see you again tomorrow when we talk about edamame and how to grow them hydroponically. So I'm looking forward to that one. Should be a good one. All right. Till tomorrow. Goodbye.